Young, thank you so much for being here today. We were just having you guys were having a great conversation like up until a second ago. So let's get through some housekeeping and we'll keep the conversation going. Sounds good?
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, for sure. All right, welcome everyone. As you might know, my name is Jonathan Vasquez. I am a product manager at Beeline. I basically work on building all the cool tech that powers our lending platform. And I am the host of the Home Run or Real Estate Investing Bootcamp. We have 6 sessions planned. This is number 2. Welcome back to those that were here last week. Just a reminder, we have 4 more after today, but starting this week, we're going to a bi-weekly cadence. So the next one will be in 2 weeks, not next week. So make sure you go on our page and register ahead of time so you'll be informed when the next link goes out. Last week, we spoke about different ways that you can finance an investment property. We even talked about some ways that you can finance some property without using your income. This week, I am super excited because I have 2 rock stars who are going to walk us through how to find that person that's going to help you find that property that you're going to finance. So very quickly, today we're going to talk about a few things, but at a high level, you can expect to learn where to find, the ideal agent, your investor agent, how to discern a great agent from a good agent, and then what are some questions you should be asking when you're doing these inspections, right? And how do you build chemistry with your agent? Your agents, your brokers are, my opinion is that they are the most important member of your investment team. So that's what this session is going to be all about. Very quickly, disclaimer. The content of this presentation and any future presentations is for informational purposes only. Please consult your legal or financial advisors or other licensed professionals before you make any decisions. We cannot give you advice on this webinar, but we hope you find this informational and entertaining. So with that, let's roll. There we go. Yeah. Meg Young, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Awesome. Why don't we start, since this is the first time that our audience is seeing you, why don't we start with some intros? Nick, do you want to go first?
Sure. How far back am I going? When I got into real estate?
Sure, yeah. Tell us how you got into real estate, where you're based out of, what kind of client you work with.
Yeah, I am down here in South Florida, sunny South Florida. I work both the Miami and Fort Lauderdale real estate markets. I opened an office right in between those 2 markets so I could work both Fort Lauderdale and Miami. I'm in Hollywood, Florida, in South Florida. I got into real estate in 2015. I had previously been at a sales job when I was in college. I used to do door-to-door sales. I knocked on doors for like over 80 hours a week for 13 weeks straight. So it was like the best and worst sales job you could ever have. Just tons of experience packed into a short period of time. I left sales after college and went and worked in the music industry. When I got my real estate license, I was working for DJ Khaled at his studio in North Miami. And so that was fun, but I missed sales. I missed the ability to kind of build something based on how hard I could work. So I jumped into real estate in 2015, joined a Keller Williams office, and sold 29 houses the first year, and was the rookie of the year in that office of 160 agents. I stayed working with that team for a couple years as a buyer's agent, just learning how to do the business, doing over 60 transactions in the first couple years. And then I realized that I was looking for a different type of culture than I was being offered at my current brokerage. So I actually partnered back up with the same company that taught me how to do door-to-door sales. And I opened up a real estate brokerage in 2018 right here in Hollywood, Florida. That is completely relationship-based and referral-based, and was really just kind of learning how to create a new business for 2018, 2019, trying to get back off the ground. By 2020, I was selling within the top 1% of agents in South Florida. There's over 80,000 real estate agents in South Florida. We have the highest concentration of anywhere in the country. So I tried to climb that pretty quickly. And then just in the last couple years have expanded my team from South Florida to Orlando, Gainesville, and Daytona, and working on opening up in Jacksonville as well. So trying to take over the state of Florida currently. That's where we're at.
Nice. That's awesome. I have so many questions about your time working in the music industry now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have I never told you that?
No, I didn't know that. I did know about the door to. What were you selling door to door?
We sold educational products. So it was like everything from books to help little kids learn how to read, all the way up to like SAT and ACT prep and online tutoring and just all kinds of educational stuff for school age kids.
Gotcha. That stuff work. When you were saying that's the best and worst sales job to have, Young was nodding because I know he worked in sales for a long time before he got into real estate. So I'm gonna let Young talk about himself a little bit, introduce himself, and yeah, we're gonna have to dive into the music piece a little bit.
Sounds good, man.
So I was born in Vietnam, and my whole family was a family of developers, and my grandfather built like half the largest university in Vietnam, built hospitals, and built a good portion of the city my family's from, and we lost everything after the war, and came here to the States with pretty much no English, no background. Matter of fact, for fun, my dad went and got HVAC certified when he was like 60 years old, and he didn't have the equivalent of a GED. So I had to like help my dad get his GED when he was 60 so he could take a technical school. So he came here, and we basically floated money on credit cards and bought a condemned property and then renovated the condemned property, and making $12 an hour is how much my dad made at the time, I think. He started amassing a real estate portfolio. So I grew up around real estate. So since I was like maybe like 7 years old, my dad used to take me to construction sites. 6 years old, my dad used to take me to construction sites. And as a rebel, I was like, I don't want to work in real estate. So I actually decided to go to school for electrical engineering and computer engineering instead. And I got back into real estate, and I should just listen to my dad. I'd be much better off if I would just listen to him. But I was scarred when I was like six years old. He'd wake me up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and be like, let's go flip houses. Let's go and like rehab these houses. And I didn't want to do any of that. So I was kind of scarred as a child to not be part of real estate. And then I turned around and here I am, and I actually really enjoy it. I wish I would have got to this a lot sooner. Fast forward to the future, I've been a mortgage broker for 3 years. I did sales and digital advertising, and also non-traditional and traditional medias too as well. I coded a video game when I was 14 years old, so I have background in coding too as well. And then basically, I've been a licensed real estate agent for approximately a little over 10 years. I have over $110 million, $120 million in transactions. 120, close to 120. And I personally have rented somewhere between 400 and 500 apartments, because I was a rental agent at one point before I did sales. I rented 400 to 500 apartments in my time. So then the needs, I went a different path than Nick. Nick went for all brokerage. I basically created verticals. So I own a construction company, a property management company, a syndication company, and I work as agency too as well. So I actually run 4 different businesses simultaneously, and basically so. So it doesn't give me much of a life, but I enjoy what I do. So that's pretty much what I do then. So
that's awesome.
Yep.
And you're based in Boston, Massachusetts.
Sure am. Yep.
But you also cover the whole state, right? Is that correct?
Well, I flip houses too. I just bought a house in New Hampshire. I just flipped another house here in Saugus, right outside of Boston. And I'll go as far down as Providence. I just haven't found anything that makes sense for me. So I'm more like Eastern Mass.
I feel like some people are looking at a map right now, trying to figure out what all these places are that no one talks about ever.
Yeah.
No, that was great. So something that I find really interesting, I had not realized until just now, is the way, I mean, you're both excellent at what you do, but you've built your businesses in such a very different way, right? Like you mentioned, Young, you're building up verticals. So you do all these different things, right? And then you have teams that you're building in all of those. And then, Nick, you're more like spreading to brokerages geographically, right? And I mean, Florida is really big, right? And the markets, there's multiple metro markets, unlike in Mass where there's only a couple. So it's really interesting how being in two different geographical areas, you're able to do those two different business strategies and grow that way. I guess, Nick, if you don't mind sharing a little bit, you kind of answered, what I wanted to get into next. So, Nick, could you talk a little bit about your investment experience? I know you also invest in real estate, aside from being a broker and building out that brokerage.
So I was young when I got into I was 25 when I got into real estate and was not, ready to buy my first primary or anything yet for a couple years as I was trying to get off the ground. 2018 is when my wife and I just bought our first primary after having helped, over 100 people buy their houses and getting the experience of doing that. I quickly learned in my first couple years of real estate that I liked the ability to analyze a property logically and then not have to deal with the emotion of, when you're working with first-time home buyers or people that are attached to their properties. It's a very emotional sale. So I loved to kind of learn how to analyze these properties from just a logical standpoint. So after I bought my first primary, I set myself up on an auto email search that every single multifamily in the county that I live in, I would analyze every single one for a year before I felt comfortable pulling the trigger on something. So I analyzed hundreds of properties over this first year until I found something that I was like, this is perfect. I got to pull the trigger, and bought my first duplex in 2018. In 2020, right as the COVID interest rates were crashing. So that helped a ton. And it was just, from having helped so many other people buy multifamilies and investment properties in South Florida, I kind of just knew what to look for at that point after all that analysis. I am now, so I love the idea of multifamilies because it's one of the safest real estate investments you can make in the long term. But like everybody else in the world, I was very attracted to the cash flow that can be made in the vacation rental world. So we went under contract for new construction in Kissimmee, just south of Orlando. That's about 15 minutes from the Disney parks. And that should be finished by the end of this year. And the next thing on the list is kind of the combination of the two. There's a couple very good areas in South Florida where you can buy a small multifamily that's a very safe investment and vacation rent that property out and get multiple incomes from it if it's close enough to a downtown area or the beach or something. So I've kind of helped out on everything that is a long-term buy and hold type of property. A little bit less on the flip side of things, like I'm sure Young will have a little more experience to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I saw Young again nodding when you mentioned multifamily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you had a thought in mind. Do you want to share that?
Oh, that's the best vehicle. I mean, everybody I know in being a rental agent, I got exposed to a whole lot of different property managers and a whole lot of investors. And, I have personal friends that own like 10,000 units and 5,000 units. And everyone will say the same thing. If you're going to start out in investments, your best play is really multifamily in the beginning. Like that's the safest one because you have a higher cap rate. You're also going to have spread risk because you have multiple units. You don't have to depend on one person, right? And the numbers just are a little bit harder when it's a single unit too as well. Then like you always can make better numbers. There's also a tax. You can also do cost segregation studies for tax purposes. You can do 1031 exchanges too as well. As long as, and then also if you realize like how the financing works with debt service ratios too as well, like if you bump the rents like even a little bit, you can refinance and reuse that money basically and redeploy that money tax free. Whereas any of the other strategies, you may have to deal with some sort of like tax implications too as well upon sale, unless you do a 1031 exchange. And so it's generally speaking, it's pretty much the best type of investment you can in real estate is multifamily, hands down. Unless you're doing a value add or a rehab, But then there's also tax implications because that's all short term and under a year. So 100% multifamily is the way to go. If you can.
I think it's a kind of a little known fact, but I love to tell, especially like new investors this. But 2008, when the market crashed, it was 4% of all single family homes in America got foreclosed on. 0.4% of multifamilies got foreclosed on. There were 10 times more single families that got foreclosed on than multifamilies because of the fact that people are always going to need a place to rent. Even if values are going down, you can still hold a duplex or a triplex or something if things go wrong in a market.
And the only exception I would have to that would be if the market is on the bottom, like say it's when things tank, then you could buy something that you feel would appreciate, and you could do a 1031 exchange that would kind of be similar to as well. But you're putting all your eggs in one basket because you're probably going to get, like, for example, like we had a virtual assistant that I had analyze. I think it was around 6,000 different listings that are available in the greater Boston area. So in every zip code, I can tell you, generally speaking, what the average range for your cap rate for any of these properties are, or your cash on cash return is. Then, so using these analytics, I mean, you're looking at like a 2 to 3% return on a condo, whereas a multifamily, some of the multifamilies we have, we're getting 18% on your returns. So I mean, but the thing is, like the 2 or 3%, it's not much, but in the past couple of years, if you bought something, you could get something for hundreds of thousands of dollars more. So I mean, it would appreciate a couple $100,000, but it's kind of like legal gambling. You're either going to get the 2 or 3%, get a huge appreciation, or with multifamily, you kind of get a little bit of both. So it's a much safer investment, I think. I don't know what happened. I just went really dark. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, your light. Did your light go out?
I have no idea. I don't even have a light on. I'm not sure what happened there. Huh.
Oh, okay. Well, while you work on, there you go.
There you go. I don't expect it.
It's funny. People, this is how you know we're live, for sure. No, and actually, I want to make a comment. This whole conversation that just happened, that's why I insist the agent is the most important member of your investment team. Right here, that knowledge. Young, you mentioned 6,000 deals that you had someone analyze. That was just someone that you were paying to analyze them. Nick, how many deals do you think you analyzed in that year?
It was probably only a few hundred. I don't, which to me that sounded like a lot until I heard what he just said.
Well, but those you were doing yourself, right? So you were doing that in blocks of time, which makes sense. And I mean, realistically, I know that on an average year, I would not have time to analyze hundreds of deals, right? Maybe 50, like one a week, right? Would be reasonable. And so that's why that knowledge is so invaluable. I don't know how you put a price in that.
Yeah.
So knowing that you know all these things, you have all this experience, I want to get a little bit into how would someone that is new to real estate investing, maybe someone that has never even purchased a primary home, how would someone like that go about finding someone like you? So can you talk a little bit about how you find your clients? Obviously referrals, and you have maybe some advertising going on, but what are some unique ways that people have come across you?
Okay, I'll start. So now my business is at a point where it is about 90% of it does come from referrals, either from current or past clients or friends. Probably 10% of people will find me online somewhere, or and that might be Zillow or Yelp or Google or whatever. A lot of the investor clients that I've ended up working with got in touch with another agent in a different market that was an investor focused agent, that me and that agent both know each other and know, okay, you're my guy for Austin, I'm your guy for South Florida, and we both know that we can trust each other to analyze these properties well for our clients and give them insight on, not only the current returns, but the appreciation, like Young was talking about, what's going on in that area. So I think it's important for agents like myself and Young to build these referral-based relationships with other agents around the country where we know we can trust. I'm pretty sure by the end of this conversation, I'm going to know I can trust to send somebody to Young pretty comfortably, and that's been helpful for me over the last 7 years.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, has that also been your experience, or?
Honestly, it's almost the exact same. I almost could almost go word by word with Nixon. I would say like somewhere around 90% of my clientele is referral. Like I barely, I mean, I have team members that I actually refer a lot of my new business to, but 90% of my business is from word of mouth. I really don't have. I mean, my advertising budget is literally like 8% what I used to spend. Like every year I look at my advertising budget, and I looked at the height of how much I used to spend for advertising. I'm down about 8% this year, what I used to spend. So I think online reviews is very helpful, but word of mouth, like you said, I have my counterpart. I have a counterpart in Tampa, and I have a counterpart in New York City that sends me. We send each other business back and forth too as well. And I have a counterpart in Missouri. So it's kind of funny that Nick said this because I do the exact same thing too as well.
Yeah. Yep. When you find those agents, you can trust, you kind of keep that relationship alive. If you were a brand new investor though, and you were looking to find the right agent in a market where you didn't have somebody, of course you could always ask somebody like Young or me if we have somebody in that market. But in addition to that, there's all kinds of meetups that you can get involved with too in your local market, whether they're online or in person, that are more investor focused. And typically there's going to be some good agents that will show up to those as well, that know the investment game and can help guide somebody getting started.
Cool, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess since you mentioned events, what are like your top 3 events that you attend? And I know with COVID, a lot of things went virtual, but hopefully, I don't know, Young, how are things in Boston nowadays? Are things kind of back to in person or still virtual for most things?
So I feel like COVID doesn't exist almost in Boston. Like nobody really. I mean, once in a while, some places require you to wear a mask here and there, but generally speaking, everything's back to normal. I mean, like I ran my business virtually to begin with anyway, so it's not really much difference there.
So in terms of like networking, I mean, people, are there, like I said, like, what are your top 3 events that you would tell people to go to?
Oh, networking events. Yeah. I go to places.
That's where the question was going.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. I generally like to go to places, this is kind of counterintuitive, that have no other real estate people. Like I joined like a boating club, yacht club, kickball leagues. I try to go out and enjoy things and do things that I like and enjoy. That's certainly how I run into people. So biotech conferences are pretty big up here, things like that. So
yeah, it's nice if you can be the only realtor in the room for sure. Go to an attorney event or a dentist event or something, that you don't have a ton of competition there. From an investment standpoint, though, there's bigger pockets, which is where a lot of people start getting their investment information. So they do have, virtual groups as well as in-person meetups in most major cities in America. South Florida and a lot of other major cities around the country have another group called Multifamily and More. So there's South Florida Multifamily and More, which meets up here. And the duplex that I bought when I got started came from a lead from that meetup. So those are 2 that I would recommend checking out if they're in your city from more of an investment standpoint. The ones that are like the ones I have found, like there's BREIA, Broward Real Estate Investors. I have found that is more like wholesaling focused and less about like masterminding on what's a good buy and hold or a good flip type of investment.
There's around here, actually, now that you said it, I am part of a RIA, where it's a local group of investors, but I actually go there looking for deals.
Yeah.
I've actually have had 2 or 3 deals come from one of those networking groups. But it's a great place to learn because the person that is doing the deals is the person you want to learn from. So that's actually a good one too. And I actually go to meetup.com for those. And but they're not all the same. Some of them are not worth your time, to be honest with you, and some of them are. I feel like when you went into the room, there's some that have like 100 members. Those are great. But I've been at ones where I show up and there are only two people that show up for these meetings. So, I mean, you know, like you definitely want to go to the one that has a good amount of people than the 2-person one. You know, another one is also like there's BNIs too as well. But I don't know if that's where you go for an investor, but it's definitely where you go to find an agent, because they typically have like a certain level of expectation for performance in certain network groups like that. You know, so. But like the local RIAs are great. And that's a great way to start. I forgot about that.
No.
Gotcha. So what I'm getting out of that is that you should have your intention clear to decide which events to go to based on the type of agent that you're looking for, right, to help you out with your investment. So and RIAs seem to be common in most cities, in bigger pockets. There is one thing I forgot to mention in the beginning, and I just saw a question come in the chat. The chat is open for questions. There's a Q&A tab. Please submit your questions. We'll get to them shortly in the next few minutes, but I completely forgot to mention that before. And also, I know a few more people join, so please submit your questions, and we'll get to them in a few minutes, and we'll continue the conversation there. I wanted to ask you a little bit. This is a bit of a, I think, let's see how you feel about this question. What are some things? So if I'm a new investor, right, and I don't have a lot of knowledge, what are some things that I could or should ask an agent to determine if they would be a good fit for me? How do I tell the good ones from the ones that maybe are not so good?
So I would say one of the things I like to do is situational questions. The thing is, like, if someone has an elevator pitch prefab ready to go, that's one thing. But if you ask him a situational question, it has to be pulled from actual real world experience. So if you ask him a very specific like situation, like, you know, what would you do in this case if X, Y, and Z? You know, like something that's very specific. And either the person's had experience doing it, or they've heard from somebody or read something somewhere that can assist you with it. That's typically going to give you can kind of tell if the person has experience that way, more than like boilerplate questions, so to speak. Also, like vital statistics in the area too as well. If someone's able to spit out like dollar per square foot, you know, they can tell you, you know, hey, this particular neighbor, because in real estate, especially with real estate investing, you literally could walk across the street and it's not the same thing. You could lose your rent revenue could be a 25% drop off from walking across the street. So if the person's familiar with how much things actually rent for, because in the end, what you're selling, what you're doing in real estate multifamily investing is you're not really buying property, you're buying a business, right? And what you're doing is you're improving the business either by increasing the cash flow or basically cutting expenses one way or another. So for you to understand what your earning potential is very important. So somebody has to have some sort of experience. Something you could ask somebody would be, have they or do they manage any properties themselves? Because like ultimately in the end, if you're buying an investment property and you're buying for someone who's never been a landlord, it's like asking someone who's poor how to be rich, you know, or asking someone who's like a little heftier how to be skinny. You want to ask somebody who's already done it. So I would say situational questions, statistics, things like that. You know, like, you know, ask them if they're a manager, a property manager, or ask them if they're in the industry or whatnot. You know, so that's what I would ask.
Gotcha, makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a great point. Is like being able to ask an agent about the statistics of an area. Like the way that we measure how fast the market is moving, for example, the absorption rate, the supply of inventory in the market. The real estate industry is an industry where 10 to 20% of the agents are doing 80% of the business. And there's a ton of agents out there that do a few deals a year and kind of hang their license somewhere and are probably not the type of agent that you would want to trust to handle a decision as big as this, and most of those agents aren't going to be able to answer the type of questions like I was just talking about and Young was talking about. So supply of inventory and absorption rate of an area and how fast the market's moving, what direction it's going, especially in a time like right now. The media there's so much good clickbait out there about how the market's still booming and the market's crashing, and it's all very regional, depending on what your local market is like. So an agent that can explain the local market in terms of what your returns look like and what the appreciation is likely to look like in the near future. When I'm asking on the other side, when I'm meeting somebody for the first time, I like to kind of explain to them the idea that we could be an investor on this type of property where it's extremely passive. Your cap rate is a little lower, but it's the easiest type of investment you could ever buy. Or there's this one over here that's in a rougher area, but we got it for cheap enough that our cap rate is a lot higher, but we're going to deal with a lot more turnover and a lot more repairs. And every investor needs to decide where on that scale they want to be, and kind of be able to explain to them like what the sweet spot is in your brain. But some people are looking for this and some people are looking for this, Hope that
I absolutely agree with that, because condo, low return, never get a phone call. Multifamily, you're gonna get phone calls, absolutely. And then also I think one of the things here, at least in Boston, because everything here is like 100 years or 200 years, God knows how long old. So you have like 10,000 generations of electrical, 10,000 different generations of plumbing. Like building codes here are we have some of the longest building codes in America here. So there's so many different things that have changed in construction. I think if you find somebody who has some experience, I mean, obviously, you don't ask a construction worker specifically, maybe, but someone who has some experience in estimating cost. Because if your initial investment is $100,000 and you think you're going to make $10,000 out of the $100,000 you're making, but then you buy the property, you spend another $100,000, you're really not making that much money. You're only making 5% of your return now instead of 10% return. So that people fall into all the time. I actually have helped buy properties that were not properly renovated, and that's how I get them at a deep discount. I remember we bought this property where literally there's raw sewage pouring from the third floor down to the basement, the entire 3-floor building. That was great discount. But I mean, because somebody who obviously wasn't a plumber did the plumbing there, So, but that was bought from another investor who was bought at a very deep discount because they didn't factor those costs in, So, I mean, I think that having a little bit of knowledge of actual cost of things is important too. Yeah.
And an agent, not for example, I'm not on Young's level of running a general contracting company on the side, but typically an agent in the residential world, if they're doing a lot of business, they have looked at hundreds of inspection reports, and they know how to read inspection report. They know that this estimate this inspector gave is a little high or a little low or whatever it is, and you kind of get good at that over the years too. But and then you just have to adjust with the times as prices have been going up on some things lately.
I was going to ask you about that, because over the past 2 years, you kind of had to reset, right? All the prices of everything went up.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you manage that sudden change, right? Where all of a sudden, I'm very familiar now with Romex.
Yeah.
Romex prices double, right, in 2020. Yeah. So how do you adjust? How do you prepare so that when you get that estimate and it's 20 grand instead of the 10 you're used to, I know this is normal now, and how do you explain that to your clients?
Yeah, I think just transparency of conversation with the inspector, as an agent, to always be able to reach out to the inspector and ask these questions, to be able to reach out to, as an agent, you should also always have a go-to electrician, plumber, roofer, everything that you can reach out to and kind of get some more updated quotes on as well if you need to. And so just transparent conversations with your inspectors and your vendors, I think, about what's going on out there.
Gotcha, that's fair. So I think this question we had come in lines up perfectly with this piece of the conversation. It's kind of long, so I'm going to read it. Can you see the questions that come in?
Yeah, on public. Yeah, I can see them.
All right, I'm going to read the top one. It says, I know there are logical factors to look at when analyzing properties, but there are less logical things you've seen that drive property sales. Okay, hold on. Let me summarize this. Okay, basically, what else other than the numbers should you look at when you're analyzing an investment property? And they're mentioning things like location of the house, if it's in a corner, if it has a view, flat blocks, etc. It's kind of a loaded question. So.
I am of the mindset of kind of, as I was describing that super risk averse person versus the super risky person, I'm kind of like right in the middle as my sweet spot, which means I'm looking for cash flow and income, but I'm also looking for appreciation. So the ability to buy in an area where you can see the surrounding areas changing and it moving in that direction. I know that's kind of an obvious answer, but unless you know the area well enough and can see this happening through the years, it's kind of hard for you to just drive into the area and know that it's moving to that area. So that's one factor. I guess, you know, by their example of houses on corners, houses with views and all that, there are times when having a house very close to a school is a positive thing and times when it's a very negative thing. And so you just kind of have to know what does it look like at 3 o'clock on that block? You know, is this the school that the parents renting in this multifamily want to be able to walk their kids to every day? Because that could be a huge win, right? But if it's a super noisy block at 3 o'clock every day and it's just not a comfortable area, then that's going to be the opposite effect, you know?
That's that example resonates really well with me because at 3 p.m. I have to drive 3 or 4 blocks over to be able to leave my house.
Yeah.
Right next to one of the best schools in the area. So
it's a great school, but yeah, people are lined up down the street, you know?
Yeah, like a mile. It's a long line of cars. So I got to go around them.
Yeah.
Sorry, and do you want to add anything else to that? Sorry, another one.
I think there's a lot of it that can be analyzed through data. But like the I think as Daniel has said in here, there are things that are less logical, right? Those are going to be more intuition. I mean, like the thing is, like, you know, we can write a spreadsheet with hundreds of different items, right? But real world experience is worth just as much value. Like, I mean, for example, in international, and I don't know how many times these international people come in and they just go crazy with the prices here. Like I you know, like everyone else, like this year I've been on the listing side and I've had people that everyone's offering about the same amount of money. And then there's an international cash person that offered like 150 over everyone else. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to take that guy because he's cash and he's $150,000, but he's obviously overpaying and there's no appraisal to worry about because it's cash. But it kind of resets the price of the market then because everyone thinks you can get 150,000 over asking now in the same house. So like, I think that you want to make sure that you find somebody who has experience in that specific area. And it's almost like an intuition, so to speak. Like, I mean, things that we look at is like how noisy an area, like you said, is like high traffic area. I look at aerial views too as well, such as like railroad tracks. We have a whole lot of railroads here. Railroad tracks too as well. Here we also have also like weird places in Boston where you can't drive your car. Traffic patterns don't make any sense. It's impossible to park your car anywhere. Like those are other factors too as well. And then like one thing I look at pretty often too is also flood maps too as well. FEMA is a government insurance program, and everyone knows, you know, the government's not most efficient business out there, and so the premiums just keep going up and up and up. So if you're in a floodplain, you got to watch out for that too as well. I'd be careful about buying things in floodplains because the premiums, they're almost bankrupt right now, so they're probably going to reach a premium again. So I try to avoid floodplains, you know, things like that, you know. But a lot of it's going to be intuition from just real world experience.
So both Nick and I basically live in an area that's at some point going to flood. We don't know when, but it will. What's happening internally.
This is not a joke or an exaggeration. The entire state of Florida is in a flood zone.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere does not require flood insurance. You're not likely to flood everywhere if you're in Florida, but you know, we're at sea level, so your hazard insurance is going to cover some level of flood necessary. Yeah.
It impacts the price a lot here. Like the same house can be like $100,000-$200,000 less if it's in a flood zone here.
Yeah, not here. We're all on the same level, literally.
Yeah.
See, if the whole market's the same, it doesn't matter. But when there's like, you're like the only guy in a flood zone, then it's going to impact you. But if everyone's in a flood zone, then I guess it all doesn't really matter then.
Yeah, we just overpay for insurance.
That's what we do.
I wanted to drill a little bit into the type of clients that you're working with. I think we've kind of made the assumption that we're talking about investor clients, right? Mostly for both of you. But what do those investors look like? Are they more like first-time investors, especially with referrals? Are you getting people that have, entire portfolios, or what's that breakdown roughly, do you think, of the type of investor that you work with?
Mine is all over the place. A large percentage of the transactions that I do are still still people looking to buy or sell their own home, and I'm still able to kind of give them insight on where value should go and all that. I really make it a habit. I mean, I started as young as I could, and I also really try to make it a habit for every first-time home buyer that I work with to start talking to them about investing as soon as they've closed on their first primary. So from that aspect, I love helping out there. I love teaching there are so many gifts to first-time home buyers to buy. Like, you can buy a duplex, triplex, quadplex with an FHA loan for 3.5% down. And I love the ability to teach somebody that's 25, 30 years old about how to build wealth quickly and kind of house hack through that gift from the government, in my opinion. Right now, so I like small multifamilies, if you haven't noticed that yet. Right now I have another client that has an 11-unit building in your neighborhood, Jonathan, that we're going to be listing soon. So for me, it's kind of all over the map, but on the investment side of things, it's pretty well balanced between small multifamilies and people that are looking to buy single families or multifamilies for vacation rental in popular South Florida neighborhoods.
So I would say my spread is pretty wide. I work with people that bought an investment property from me, and they're now on their 15th investment property with me now. So I've been their agent for 15 different properties. I have a couple groups from, I have clientele from overseas and like 12 different countries. I have clients that actually have literally said, if it fits these parameters, here's cash. And they have actually never walked into the property. I manage the entire portfolio, and they just give me the money. And they actually have never been in the building themselves. Everything's done through video. I have a blank check, basically. So I mean, that's the degree. That's the varying degrees. I have private equity guys too as well, and then I have partners for the larger deals too as well. But a majority of my clients are probably, I would say, like, not first time investors, but I would say like the breakdown would be like 70% of my clients are investors. I would say only 30% are owner occupant buyers. I would say 70% are investors. And 70%, I would say about half of them are first time investors. I would say. The thing is, like, the first time investors, I find it's more rewarding to work with first time investors. I enjoy it. And I want to help people. So it's either myself or one of my team members will help a first time investor. But I find that it takes a lot more time. So the reason why half my time is spent on first time home investors is because of the length of time it takes to teach somebody everything they need to know. My investors who've been doing this for a little while, literally they'll make a decision on the spot. We'll look at one place, say yes or no. Or we'll actually underwrite the property before we even go look at it. So but they spend a lot less time with me, if that makes any sense. So
cool, awesome. I see a few more questions coming in about financing. I'm gonna actually follow up with those questions after the webinar, just because I don't want to put Nick and Young in a position to talk about financing and things that might not be under your license. So I'm not ignoring you. I want you to know I'm gonna get someone who works with financing to get back to you individually. So thank you for the patience. We only have a few minutes, so I want to ask you a couple more questions about your, I don't want to say your ideal client, but think about that those clients that are just prepared, right? Especially when they're first timers, what are some things that people can do, especially first time investors? What can they do to be, ready when they meet you, when they come talk to you for the first time, right? And they're like, oh, wow, you guys are ready to go. Let's go and look for properties. What are some of those things that they can do? And, are there any resources that you can share with them?
So, yeah, you want to go first, Young? I feel like I've been taking it every time.
All right, I'll go first this time. So I would say three things. One, get pre-approved. Okay, know your budget is the number one thing, right? Because like you have to kind of get an idea of what the numbers are. And the first thing I always ask somebody is, how much capital do you have to work with, right? Because that's going to help me decide if this is even the right fit for you. One, number two, if it's not the right fit, maybe there's something else that you could do, But I wouldn't be afraid of investing early versus waiting, because some people will wait and say, "Oh, I need to collect more money. I need to collect more money." But there's ways around it. Like Nick had mentioned, there's a FHA 203K loan that you could do, which they'll actually even finance the cost of construction over 5 draws too as well. There's also like your FHA loans. 3.5%. The thing is, for cash on cash return, the lowest you put down, the highest your cash on cash return is going to be. So and mortgage rates up into recently have been like phenomenal, and even now, it's funny. People talk about how they're going up. I was a mortgage broker when I was giving people 8-9% loans. So it's really not that bad. The environment we're in, I think personally, compared to what it could have been. So the other thing also is that you want to know and kind of make peace with yourself, how much time you really want to put into it. I always ask people from scale 1 to 10, 10 being you want to take a shell and you want to go in there with a hammer and a drill and you want to do this all yourself. Then you want like something that's like ready to fall over, or do you want something where you just collect the money? Scale to 1 to 10, how much time you really want to dedicate to this? That kind of gives us a bit of an idea of what it is that you're looking for. Because the more you understand what you want, the better we can kind of direct you in the right direction. Some people are not suited to manage construction projects. There are construction projects I've been at where I've been at the job site 76 times. Not everyone has time to drive out there and spend an hour looking at everything and drive back, right? And then the area that you want to focus in. You want to kind of think about what area you want to focus, budget, area, and how much real involvement you want, in the actual process. Do you want to flip houses? Do you want to buy and hold houses? Do you really want to be a landlord? There's a couple investors I have that they bought a place thinking they want to be a landlord. They hate it. That's the truth. And it's not for everybody. There are other people that now they have like 40 tenants, 100 tenants. So it depends. So that's pretty much all I have. All right, Nick.
Yeah, it's kind of hard, Young, right? Like if somebody's not already pre-approved, you can't really analyze their cash on cash return on any specific property without knowing what's their down payment looking like, what's their interest rate looking like. So it's not that as agents, it's not that we're just saying like, hey, go get pre-approved so you don't waste our time. It's like, go get pre-approved so we don't waste your time, because I can't really analyze these properties well for you without knowing the financing situation first. So that's kind of perfect. How involved do you want to be? For me, I advise people, like, if you want to learn about this, you should go, read books and listen to Bigger Pockets podcasts and all these real estate investing podcasts to learn. But then you have to listen to the advice of an agent that knows the local market. Because some of the stuff that they're going to preach on national shows is not going to apply to a market that moves as fast as South Florida does or Boston does. So you really kind of have to be humble enough and ready to learn from the agent that knows the area as well, and kind of not let ego take over by you just heard a radio show about syndication and now you know how to syndicate, right? So that doesn't work like that. It takes time to learn these things. But lean on your agent to do the analysis for you, because it takes time to get good at that too. So hope that helps.
It does help. it echoes some of the conversations we had last week around just trusting, and last week we talked about the financing piece. Going as if you know nothing, right? Don't come in thinking you know everything or you know enough. I've learned through my experience that the less I speak and the more I share what I'm trying to do and the less assumptions I make, the better advice I get from the experts I go to. So,
and to kind of piggyback, the last thing I wanted to say that I kind of forgot to say is if you listen to enough interviews of other investors, and you're going to hear over and over again when they're asked what's your biggest regret, what's your biggest mistake, every single one of them says not starting earlier.
Yes.
Not starting sooner. I say that to say this: your first deal does not have to be the perfect deal, right? Let's find the best option that we can, but there's no such thing as a perfect, highest cash flowing, highest appreciating property out there. Think long term about building your blocks one piece at a time, and you're gonna get better at building them the right way, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense, and thank you for sharing that. We are almost at time. I do want to share one thing for pre-approvals. How far in advance do you think people should go out and get a pre-approval before they speak to you?
Immediately. Yeah. I mean, like, the thing is, it's a complete shot in the dark. Like, we don't have any numbers. I mean, like, it's like you don't have a target. I mean, you have to have a bullseye for us to throw something at. Like we have no idea what you're working with. I mean, like, I've had clients that it goes both ways. I've had clients that didn't get pre-approved, and then they realized that they could buy a lot more money than they thought they could. Buy a lot more than they thought they could. And then, like, if you're buying a property where you're going to live in one of the units too as well, I mean, that changes the whole picture. But we don't know where that picture is until you have an expert kind of look at your situation. And then once we have the pre-approval, I can plug into a spreadsheet and be like, well, this is what we're working with. There's a dramatic difference depending on what you're working with too as well.
Yeah. Knowledge is power. It gives you transparency, and there's no such thing as too soon. Even if you want to buy a year from now, we can at least start analyzing properties together so we know what a good deal is for you. So even if you're far out, don't think that your lender is going to have to re-pull your credit every 60 days for no reason if you're not about to buy. You don't have to do that. Get pre-approved once, start working with your agent, and then they're probably going to need to update that stuff when you're ready to make an offer. But there is no too soon, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Fair. All right. So before we go, is there any last thoughts that you want to share? Anything that you wanted to bring up before that we didn't get to? I think we've gotten through all the questions now that we had.
Just do your research. Talk to agents in the market that you want to invest in. Listen to facts and logic. Don't just listen to what you see as kind of clickbait out there that's there to sell a product or something.
Yeah, 100%. I would echo what Nick says. Real estate really is really done on the ground. I mean, you have to go to your local agent, and don't make the mistake of. I mean, no offense to anyone who has a friend that works in real estate, but some of the worst transactions I've ever been part of have been that person who has zero experience, that has no business being a real estate agent or investing, giving advice to somebody. It's like the blind leading the blind. So make sure that whoever it is has experience in it, and is from that local area or has done business in that local area. That's huge. I can't say that enough. I have seen so many people overpay for things outside of Boston. I've had people I've had someone tell me that they bought a property and they came back to me and they asked me to lease the property, manage it for them. And they said that they were told that they could rent the apartment for $4,000. I did the analysis, like, your apartment's worth $2,400. I was like, I can't rent this for $4,000. And she put it on the market. She said she wanted $4,000. She wouldn't come off the price. 9 months later, no one rented the thing. On the 11th month, she rented it for $2,400 on the 11th month. So you lost like a whole year of rent because she didn't buy right. So, and because she used a out of area real estate agent that said, "Hey, you should pay for this much. This is how much you're going to get for rent." So she's still like upside down. She's probably upside down 6 figures still at this point. So make sure you find someone local. Then
Cool, makes sense. Cool. Well, thank you guys again for your time. This has been great. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this recording so I can take notes because I couldn't really take notes while we were live. So thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. I know people that joined did as well. And we have, just a reminder, we have another session coming up in 2 weeks, and then there's 4 more left. If you have any questions, if you're watching this after, so you're not watching it live, you're watching the recording, you can go to go.makeabeeline.com/question and submit your questions. If you ask a question on this webinar and we didn't get to you, I'll make sure we get back to you one-on-one. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks.
take care.
Bye.